Your media, where you are. With Mawethu, we'll show you the chemistry of life through food that goes from the ground to the body.
Welcome to Plant Power with Mawethu. This is my first podcast on this new journey. I'm quite excited about it as we're going to be talking all things plant-based. I'm actually with the gentleman who inspired this journey. One evening where I met him, and when I saw everybody eating the way they were eating, I was left in wonder as to how could someone just say this is food. And I'm still taken aback every time I think about where I find myself right now and what I've seen happening with myself personally. This has been the greatest personal journey of self-discovery, regenerative journey in terms of holistic living. To tell us all about this remarkable plant-based journey, Itu Makale who's been plant-based for the past 17 years. Welcome, my brother. Peace and love.
Peace and love to you, my brother, and to you all, the viewers of Plant Power with Mawethu.
No, great stuff. Look, just before we get to your journey, I mean, you know all about my journey. You know where it started. I remember you laughing at me the first thing I said to you, but I'm an aspirant endurance athlete, and how can I live this life? Where am I going to get my protein? You know, all the typical stereotypes, because I was uneducated about the subject, you know. And to me, it was, and after the conversation we had, and after you've shared some data to look at, and after I saw with you, I mean, when you told me your age, even I was shocked. I was like, okay, this is definitely something worth giving a try. I mean, my journey has been amazing. Yes, it's had its challenges. I mean, growing up in your typical black communities, I mean, to not eat meat khosajinam, I mean, it's something that is not, that has not been something we've been accustomed to, even though, I mean, if we were to relocate ourselves back into space and time, it's something that we can actually point out as something that has been within our people for the longest time, for centuries. I mean, if we look at the history of Ma'at, I mean, one of the key pillars is actually to not eat any animal food. So my journey dates back to 2018. Even though we met before that, I mean, it took me a while to actually get into gear. I mean, one of the first things that you brought to my attention is that Black people die prematurely. You know, our people perish prematurely to all these chronic ailments. I mean, your diabetes, your hypertension, cancer. I mean, just before I embarked on this journey, I had lost my brother to cancer. He had cancer of I think it was cancer of the stomach, but it had something to do with the stomach. And funny enough, at his funeral, I was eating the very same thing that can be attributed to his death. But after thinking long and hard about it, I was like, you know, something has to change. You know, I need to really get into this, you know, because, and when I think around about that same time, you're going to get into your 40-day fast. And that is where I also got into it. I don't know if you can still remember that quite well.
Yeah, still.
And then what happened with me is like, if I've been poisoning my body for the past 30 odd years, surely 14 days for me shouldn't be that bad. And then as I embarked on this journey, I then told myself I'm in it. You know, what I tried to do with the first 3 weeks is that the first 7 days, I made sure that I tried to identify the foods I'm familiar with that are plant-based. And once I did that, I told myself, I'm committing to this 21 days, and this is exactly what I'm going to be consuming for the next week. And before I knew it, week 1 was I mean, had gone past by, and I didn't even know what happened to the week. And then on week 2, I was like, okay, let me try to get into how I flavor my food to make it a bit fun, and thanks to the internet, thanks to your guidance also in the whole journey, it was easy for me to see what I put in and what I eliminate. And then week 2 continued. But the most important thing, the one critical thing that I realized that I started to experience is that my energy level started, shooting up. I was not on any supplements. I was sleeping better. I had anxiety issues, but what was critical was that I had acid indigestion issues. I had digestion issues. And all of that suddenly was just starting to be a thing of the past. I was feeling lighter, I was feeling greater. And then on week 3, I was in full motion. And it is at week 3 that I decided, you know what? After having experienced what I'm experiencing now, and after seeing the power of momentum, I was on a regenerative journey in terms of wellness. And I felt like there is a restoration of my biochemistry to create healing for my body. Because remember, the fact that I wasn't going to the doctor didn't mean that there was nothing wrong with me. My cholesterol levels, by the way, were quite high before this journey. They dropped drastically. I actually started also seeing athletic advantages out of this thing because, as you know, I'm a runner, I'm a cyclist, I'm a swimmer, so I'm a triathlete. I'm a triathlete. So, and as I visited the internet, I actually realized that there are so many endurance athletes out there. I mean, there are people who do your 160-kilometer races on a plant-based diet, and they've been doing it for years, and the recovery is quite great. But also what I did is, which is something that you brought also to my attention, is how there was a discord and how we were dislocated, and how this journey is actually going to be my beginning of embarking on a journey of trying or attempting to fix the discord. And fast forward to where I am right now, I find myself talking about this subject passionately because it is something that is now close to my heart. I've worked with people who have had ailments who are actually reversing those ailments. I am talking about people who are as young as 30 years old, who have got who had serious chronic ailments, and on a whole food plant-based diet, they have seen conditions improving, conditions changing. I mean, I know of one person who was on type 2 diabetes who's now pre-diabetic. So there is definitely a conversation worth having. Definitely a conversation worth having. For now, I'll pause there. And my brother, I'd like us to continue. Firstly, share your journey. And please do not forget about the 40-day fast. I mean, that is amazing. I mean, for me, I've seen it with you. You're chasing 50. You don't even look older than 35. So go for it, my brother. Thank you.
Yes, my brother. No, thanks, my brother. My journey with this, drastic dietary change that I made began on the fall of 2003 in Joburg, down at a student dress. It was actually in the last days of my student life. There was this, Rasta couple who shared a room, at the rest, because where we were, it was a cluster of student dresses. So a rest that was adjacent to the one that I was staying in, and it was where this Rasta couple stayed. So I got acquainted with them. But what actually drew me closer to them, what captured and captivated my attention to their lifestyle was the dietary aspect of it. That was my focal point, because I had already started reading on what I came to know as preventive healthcare, as opposed to curative healthcare, where you can actually live a healthy style, preventing all that could lead to diseases that are plaguing our people, instead of waiting to get ill and then start seeking to find cure after. Now we exchanged information, but got a lot from them, and plus they were a living proof of what they were sharing with me. That is what actually deepened my conviction. My conviction to change. I would even partake, in their, mostly, evening meals, suppers. They really loved it, to have me, join them, when they were, dining, and there would be a whole discussion around diet and other issues. But my main, focus, like I said, on their lifestyle was on the natural aspect. And then I met the African Hebrew Israelite community. Because I was at the same time on a spiritual journey, of self-discovery. Shedding away every conceptual, strongholds, of dislocation, that had us convey our lives on an opposite tide, to our true essence as African people. So I had problematized the orthodox, religious, theological, conceptualization. So I met the African Hebrew Israelite community for such reasons, but the bonus to that was I also found them, pursuing this, plant-based, dietary, lifestyle. So to have a community, undergoing that drastic change in your life, to me, came handy, because you need to have your morale, boosted. You need to have your sanity reassured.
Yes, definitely.
Although we were not all in the same place, but virtually we were a community. Different families. There were families already, couples, married couples. We would, some of us, still not yet married at the time, see this, kind of lifestyle, coming into full play, before our very eyes, in those family structures. So yes, it hasn't been an easy journey. To experience, body shock. Some, certain body systems, within your structure, would react, to that, dietary change, shock. And the shock is not only physiological, or rather biological. There's also a shock from outside of your individuated space, you know, as
definitely
people going through their own personal journey. You know, there are perceptions, you know, that develop. You deal with the stereotypes. You always have to explain yourself. You will be confronted with deviation and aspersion, you know, for instance, you know, that you have deviated from culture, you know, we slaughter. But at the level of, you know, a paradigm, I had also, you know, at the time of reasoned with and interrogated, you know, the concept of culture itself. To say, you know, precedent, you know, to culture, you know, there must be nature. And I could, you know, find comfort, you know, in that, you know, sense, you know, of culture that I had. My concept of culture became a protective hedge for me, you know, against those aspersions. To say culture is a means, you know, that we cultivate, you know, for ourselves on how, you know, we make sense, you know, with nature and have our lives, you know, conveyed, you know, in consonance with that. It includes, you know, innovation, you know, it includes inventions. But for a culture to be said to be a proper culture, a glorious culture, a true culture, I reasoned that it has to be in consonance with nature.
Thank you.
At any given point in time. So yes, I got, you know, strength, you know, I got the strength, the courage, the motivation, you know, in the midst of, you know, those African Israelite, you know, brothers and sisters who read, you know, my upbringing, you know, as a newborn baby, you know, in that, you know, new lifestyle. So far, you know, for me, it's been, you know, almost 18 years. I got married. My family joined me. You know, I am raising 3 children. You know, our firstborn is 21. When we got married in 2006, you know, he joined us. He was 6. He joined us, you know, in the change. He changed diet with the mother. And our second born is a girl. She's 13 now. She was conceived by a womb that was already calibrated, you know, on a plant-based diet.
Yes.
And
Wow.
she's 13, and for the past 13 years, she has never, you know, suffered from any kind of ailment that fosters or necessitated that she receives an allopathic, you know, Western, you know, medical, you know, attention of any sort. And my son also, my firstborn, who changed with, you know, her mother in 2006, you know, when we started staying together. I mean, with not her, his mother, when we started staying together, when we got married, has ever since, you know, the dietary change that, you know, he went through, also not being to, you know, a doctor, you know, to receive an allopathic medical attention of it. So, except for 2, you know, surgical injuries of, you know, an arm, you know, fracture, you know, on 2 occasions. You know, those are the only instances that necessitated that we take him, you know, to European, you know, health maintenance, you know, organizations. And then the youngest one is now 4, you know, the same as, you know, his sister. the boy, comes from the loins of a man who produced a seed that, he became, a substance rendition of that is of a man who lives a life that is pervaded by plant-based diet. And he also, for the past, 4 years, of his existence,
Wow.
never been, and I'm not exaggerating, never been to a doctor. And we also haven't fed our children so-called children's food, which are carcinogenic chemical cocktails
Yes.
that compromise our children's immune system when they are still young. We defied that. We exposed as a family the fallacy of that. We raised our children without any of those products, that you find, in tins, and boxes and bottles. So we never raised, our children on those. They've been on milk, exclusively so for the first, 6 months, and we would introduce them to, the natural food, the plant-based diet that we are in. And for their age, food would be, prepared, differently, for ease, of their consumption, for their age. Nature has not, unfortunately for those who would argue for the necessity of getting our children to consume these, carcinogenic chemical cocktails and concoctions. Nature has not provided any so-called, children's food. I do not know any way in the forest, even, in our orchards, in our backyards. I have never seen anything that nature produces from the soil, that is exclusive for children. I have never seen that. Nature, Mother Nature in her wisdom has never provided for that. What our children eat is everything that we eat. What is good for us, nature has created that balance that it surely should be good, for our babies, whom we made, through the seed that we produced, as calibrated by what Mother Nature, has been feeding us, with. And yeah, we have had that, amazing lifestyle. No, another thing that we don't have, the aspect of being off the grid, is we don't have any medical aid. We don't have any medical aid, and we have never experienced any, challenge, in that regard. Because what we prioritize is to always be on this preventive, healthcare gear, to avoid, all the conditions and circumstances that can actually to us getting our health compromised. It is that process of preemptive, elimination to diseases, which, in our experience, it has been cleared that lifestyle, choice, diseases. It is really heart-aching to see our friends, our loved ones, relatives, close acquaintances, colleagues, suffering from diseases that are actually preventable.
Yep.
And seeking the intervention, of drugs, to a nutritional program.
Yep.
To a nutritional program. So with us, food has been medicine. Food has been medicine, inherently so, intricately so, such that we are even doing it without being conscious, of it. We have never, for the past those 15 years that I've been on this plant-based diet, I had never suffered from anything that was an alarm that raised an alarm to me that my diet is protein deficient, and neither has my wife nor my children.
The protein stereotype.
The protein stereotype, the protein stereotype. We have never suffered from anything that coerced us to be, brought to the allopathic medical institutions, wherein we will be told that, the cause of the ailment, the disease, is protein deficiency. That has never happened. That has never happened. So, yeah, that is where we are. That is where we are. To this day,
Wow.
That is where we are.
Wow. Look, I am obviously forever grateful to you. I think I say this to you, but I don't say this enough. But I mean, that one evening when we went to that lecture of Molefi Asante at UNISA, that was an evening that really changed my perception about food being medicine, about holistic wellness, what it means. By the way, I mean, I thought I was healthy until I embarked on this journey. And I think the greatest challenge is education. I don't think we're educating our people enough, or maybe our people are just not ready to transition mentally. So for me, it goes back to the issue of knowledge of self. Knowledge of self is important. People annually would upgrade their educational qualifications. People would upgrade their cars, their houses, their cell phones. But we've not transitioned to a point where we upgrade our thinking as far as health and wellness is concerned. We're left with a task, we're left with a challenge to educate our people. One of the challenges out there is that our people say that this is an expensive lifestyle, but the very same person is paying 3,000 Rand for medical aid alone, instead of investing in holistic wellness. So for me, that I find that quite problematic, but also I myself was once on that boat. It's interesting that you should mention the Hebrew Israelites, the Black Hebrew Israelites. I was actually going through a video yesterday morning. I mean, they're quite spiritual, and they quote Genesis 1 chapter, I think it's Genesis chapter 1 verse 29, that let every seed-bearing plant be food, something like that, and the herbs shall be for the healing of the nation, but those are things that have always been consistent with our Afrocentric, or rather our African-centeredness. But you've mentioned culture. The reason why I'm getting to this point is that how African-centeredness is also understood is distorted when it comes to how we relate to food. And in fact, even contemporary science has gone as far as proving that a whole food plant-based diet reverses these ailments. You find doctors today who will tell you that drugs destroy your biochemistry to reduce the symptoms, whereas a whole foods plant-based diet restores your biochemistry to put your body in an environment, to put your body in a space and a place where it actually can start self-healing. Now, people like yourself and me are left with this challenge to educate people. You know, I'm not going to get into the common stereotypes. We know there's a protein stereotype, but you find even research studies that are sponsored by dairy companies to actually prove, or rather to commission studies that say people who are plant-based or vegan have got a higher chance of bone, of actually growing osteoporosis. But when you look at the countries that consume the most dairies, they actually have the most cases of people with your hip replacement, typically South Africa. So this subject is very touchy to me because we've lost people prematurely. And we continue losing people prematurely. And we have got pandemics that will always be there. And if those pandemics actually are declared by your World Health Organization, let us at least make sure that our bodies are in a state that can fight off whatever pandemics are there. Because trust me, COVID-19 is not the last. Whether it's manufactured, whether it's not, but you and I actually find ourselves in great vitality. So how do we address this challenge?
That is true. Let me first speak to the point that you raised, the concern that you raised of the African, centered discourse, wherein any type of discussion relating to nutrition, and diet, of African people is avoided, or rather evaded. Whereas ironically, the same African-centered spaces are spaces that are primed in the predilection, for, knowledge of self, for the acquisition, attainment, of knowledge of self. It baffles me, as to why this critical aspect, of oneself, and that is, what one is calibrated to eat, naturally and in accord with one's biochemical, structure, is a subject that is evaded, and in most instances, avoided. Like I alluded to earlier, the other apologetics, that will be offered, or rather a retort, would be, I'm not gonna adopt, any lifestyle that make me go against my culture. But yeah. I said earlier on that culture has nature as its, precedent, at all times. Any honest and sincere cultural practitioner would know that culture is in itself, work in progress.
Yeah, not. Yeah.
Because you are dealing with a cultivar here. You are dealing with what we bring, into existence, through what we will, to existence. You have our cultivated, means, of conveying our lives. How we work with nature, is what produces culture.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
And nature as the precedent, to culture, is the one that must always be given preeminence, over culture, or we should keep culture in check, with nature. Nature has her laws,
Yeah.
that no, cultural belief or conviction can justify any derogation, from such a law. So we engage in these, discourses, on culture and identity, and we tend to delink that from scientific ethos, because they are often devoid of scientific ethos. And the scientific here, I'm not talking about
Contemporary.
Euro, Western science, as though science is something that is only peculiar, to the West, and Asia. But by science, I'm talking about knowledge that is found to be right and can be verified. I mean, that is science. Verifiable knowledge, or a verifiable, truth claim. One needs not wear a lab coat and be in a lab to qualify oneself, to engage in any scientific, discourse, or journey, or say, anything scientific. So you simply have to be possessing knowledge that you can, show and prove. That is science. It is a phenomenon that is not foreign to us. So we tend to ignore and leave out. We tend to ignore and leave out the scientific ethos, in our journey for, self-rediscovery, with self-knowledge as an objective, in our discourses, of African-centeredness or Afrocentricity, whatever label you may use. So we abandon, scientific ethos. And there's something that Steve Biko says, and he says it so beautifully, in an eloquent manner I couldn't have imagined. He says about culture, Black culture, to be specific, he says, and I quote, Black culture implies innovation on the part of Black people without giving recourse to white values, close quote. So there is nothing that precludes us from being innovative, because our evolutionary continuum, with evolutionary requirements, we should, within that circle, convey our lives, requires that, there would from time to time be modifications. So African culture, is not exempt to that. African culture is not precluded, in that, in that equation. So I'm pointing this out as a way to also dispel, the stereotypes.
Yeah.
To dispel the stereotypes and knowledges that are primordialist and have been made, to remain frozen, in the past, in time. When I say the past, I'm qualifying what I'm saying, in the past, in time, because there's the past that is ever present, and that is the original intent. And with culture also, we don't honestly want to engage in a discourse through which to establish, if we go back, how far back do we go? Are we going back, 200 years, 300 years, and then conclude that we have reconnected with the ancient 300 years ago, and that is the ancient, and have found the original intent, with our existence as people of our phenotype and vibrations, rhythms, and cycles, as observed, in how we relate and interact with nature. So, yes, truth is the right knowledge of reality, which knowledge, can be verifiably, demonstrated, which makes it science. So truth is nothing but high science, that we should allow ourselves to, live up to the challenge.
Wow.
Yes, my brother.
Wow. Yeah, no. We're just running out of time. I think we need a session 2 on the subject, because it's important to re-educate our people, for them to understand that when we trace ourselves back into space and time, this is not something foreign to us. In fact, if anything, this is food that is in affinity with our biochemistry, consistent with our molecular and with us on a molecular and cellular level, which is why immediately when one embarks on this journey, there's an immediate reaction. There's immediate energy of restoration. There's immediate regenerative energy. And it is not by a coincidence that this happens. It happens because there is affinity. It happens because there's correspondence between us as a being and being on a whole foods plant-based journey. So yeah, peace and love, Tehuti, Itu. My brother, thank you very much. There's definitely going to be another one, definitely. We've just run out of time. We lost track of time. There's so much we still needed to talk about. Yeah, thanks a lot, my brother. Peace and love.
No, peace and black power to you, my brother.
Peace and love. That is brother Itu Makale. Thank you very much, my brother. Peace and love. Thanks.
Your media, where you are. Mawethu will show you the chemistry of life through food that goes from the ground to the body.
Yeah, we conclude our show. There was a brother that is a friend who became a brother. I'm forever grateful that one fateful night I bumped into the brother, and I never looked back. Thank you very much. That was the first of many. Thank you. Peace and love. Thanks.